Alex, an architect whose days were meticulously planned and executed, moved through life with the calculated precision of his blueprints. He was pragmatic, grounded in the tangible, yet beneath the surface, a quiet restlessness stirred. His apartment building, a monolithic structure of glass and steel, reflected his own existence, orderly, predictable, and utterly devoid of surprise. Each morning, the same bland coffee, the same elevator ride, the same sterile office. His routine was a comfortable cage, a meticulously constructed prison of his own making, offering security at the cost of genuine excitement. Lately, though, the edges of his carefully curated world seemed to fray. A flickering fluorescent light in the hallway, a persistent cold draft where none should be, a subtle hum that only he seemed to perceive. Small, unsettling anomalies that pricked at his carefully maintained composure. They were whispers of something beyond the mundane, easily dismissed by the rational mind, yet they persisted, a growing dissonance in the symphony of his predictable life. Alex often found himself staring out his window, the sprawling city a canvas of anonymous lives, and a profound aching dissatisfaction would settle over him. He yearned for something more, a break from the monotonous loop, a secret path to an unknown destination. His building was a microcosm of society, filled with various characters but none as peculiar as Martha. An elderly resident with eyes that held the wisdom of ages and a penchant for flowing, slightly tattered garments, she often spoke in riddles, her voice a reedy whisper. "Hidden paths, dear boy," she'd murmur, her gaze piercing. "They exist for those who truly seek them." Alex, ever the pragmatist, would nod politely, attributing her words to the natural decline of age, her mind wandering through forgotten memories. He saw her as a harmless eccentric, her ramblings a quaint, if somewhat unsettling, feature of the building. He couldn't have known how prophetic her words truly were. One unremarkable Tuesday evening, the city lights blurred into streaks outside his window as Alex returned home, the weariness of another identical day heavy on his shoulders. He stepped into the elevator, its polished steel reflecting his tired face. It was empty, a rare occurrence in such a bustling building. As the door silently slid shut, his eyes drifted over the familiar panel of buttons, each numbered floor a stop on his well-worn path. But then, his breath hitched. Nestled between the floor indicator lights and the emergency call button, a new addition gleamed faintly. It was a button he had never seen before, unmarked, unnumbered, a stark black disc that seemed to absorb the ambient light. A shiver of apprehension mixed with a surge of adrenaline coursed through him. Hesitation warred with an overwhelming surge of curiosity. Every rational fiber of his being screamed to ignore it, to press his usual floor and pretend he hadn't seen it. Yet the quiet yearning for something more, the subtle nudges of the flickering lights and the strange hum, propelled his hand forward. His finger, trembling slightly, pressed the mysterious button. The elevator lurched, a sensation unlike its usual smooth ascent. It descended for a moment, a gut-wrenching drop, then abruptly reversed, beginning an ascent that felt impossibly fast, past the top floor, past where any floor should exist. A strange low hum, deep and resonant, filled the confined space, vibrating through the floor and up into his very bones. The digital display, usually a precise indicator of his location, flickered wildly, showing a series of indecipherable symbols before settling on a blank screen. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously, a disorienting dance of suspended reality. Finally, with a soft, almost imperceptible sigh, the elevator came to a halt. The hum faded into an eerie silence. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. The doors, with a slow, deliberate hiss, began to open. Before him lay a hallway, dimly lit by sconces casting long dancing shadows. It was impossible. This floor did not exist on any blueprint, any building plan. It was a space that defied logic, a corridor leading to an unknown. Alex stood at the threshold. A primal fear coiling in his stomach, yet exhilaration sharp and undeniable painted itself across his face. He was at the edge of something profound, something entirely new. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Alex, propelled by an almost magnetic force, stepped onto the clandestine floor. The air hung heavy with the scent of aged dust and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet like forgotten dreams. A profound sense of unreality washed over him, blurring the sharp edges of his formerly pragmatic world. The hallway stretched before him, an anachronism in the heart of a modern building, lined with tarnished brass fixtures and dark, heavy tapestries depicting scenes he couldn't quite decipher. Forgotten artifacts lay scattered on small ornate tables, a tarnished compass, a delicate, unidentifiable instrument, a stack of leather-bound books whose titles were obscured by time. Dust motes danced in the dim light cast by flickering gas lamp-style sconces, illuminating faded portraits adorning the walls, their subjects gazing out with expressions that hinted at secrets held for centuries. His gaze fell upon a small leather-bound journal, half hidden beneath a pile of brittle documents on a dusty pedestal. Its cover was worn smooth, the pages yellowed with age. With a trembling hand, Alex opened it, his fingers tracing the elegant, looping script within. It belonged to a former resident named Elias, and as Alex read, a chill snaked down his spine. Elias, too, had discovered this impossible flaw, his initial entries mirroring Alex's own bewildered curiosity. But as the pages turned, Elias's words grew increasingly frantic, his fascination morphing into a dangerous obsession. He wrote of a gateway, a portal to other dimensions, and whispers from beyond that promised untold knowledge and power. The journal chronicled Elias's descent, his meticulous research into ancient symbols and forgotten dimensions, his life consumed by the flaw's secrets. He spoke of a singular purpose, a grand design, but the entries soon became disjointed, riddled with paranoid ramblings and cryptic warnings. Alex felt a growing, unsettling connection to Elias's story, a spectral echo across the decades. He began to experience strange phenomena himself, fleeting shadows dancing at the periphery of his vision, distant, unintelligible voices that seemed to drift on the stale air just beyond the reach of his conscious hearing. He knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that he was walking in Elias's footsteps. Further along the corridor, a heavy wooden door, almost indistinguishable from the wall, yielded to his touch, revealing a hidden room. This was Elias's sanctuary, his laboratory of the impossible. Shelves overflowed with esoteric texts, maps of constellations that didn't exist, and intricate diagrams of what appeared to be interdimensional schematics. In the center of the room, on a cluttered desk, lay a faded photograph. It depicted Elias younger, with a fervent, almost manic light in his eyes, standing beside a woman of ethereal beauty. Her smile was gentle, her eyes filled with a quiet strength. Alex's breath hitched. The woman, Clara, bore a striking, almost uncanny resemblance to Martha. A sudden, chilling suspicion bloomed in Alex's mind. Martha's cryptic pronouncements, her knowing glances, her peculiar interest in his life. It all coalesced into a terrifying realization. She wasn't merely an eccentric old woman. She was intricately connected to this place, to Elias, and to the secrets of this impossible flaw. He had to confront her. Returning to his own floor, Alex sought out Martha, his mind racing. He found her in the communal garden, tending to a patch of wilting roses. "Martha," he began, his voice strained, "who was Elias? And Clara, what do you know about that floor?" She turned, her eyes usually twinkling with mischief, now held a profound, ancient sorrow. She deflected his questions with practiced ease, her answers vague and evasive, yet her gaze, heavy with unspoken knowledge, confirmed his suspicions. A hidden message, scrawled in the margin of Elias's last journal entry, suddenly flashed in Alex's memory. "Beware the guardian." The words, once dismissed as the ramblings of a madman, now resonated with an ominous, terrifying clarity. Alex, consumed by a relentless need for understanding, plunged headfirst into Elias's meticulous research. The hidden room became his sanctuary, its dusty air a testament to forgotten truths. He spent hours poring over the brittle pages, deciphering symbols, cross-referencing Elias's frantic notes with ancient texts he managed to find online, texts that spoke of ley lines and dimensional rifts. Slowly, painstakingly, a terrifying picture began to form. The impossible floor was not merely a secret annex. It was a nexus, a fragile vibrating point where the veil between realities thinned to an almost transparent membrane. It was a place of immense power, a gateway to other dimensions, and Elias had been on the precipice of tearing it open. The guardian, Alex now understood, was not a physical being in the conventional sense, but an ethereal entity, a sentient manifestation of the floor's own protective mechanisms. Its purpose was singular and absolute, to maintain the delicate balance, to prevent any destabilization of realities that could unravel the very fabric of existence. As Alex delved deeper, he felt the guardian's presence more acutely. It wasn't a tangible touch, but a chilling sense of being watched, an omnipresent pressure that prickled his skin and whispered warnings through the silence. The flickering lights, the sudden drops in temperature, the shifting shadows. These were not random occurrences, but the Guardian's subtle, increasingly urgent attempts to deter him. A specific passage in Elias's journal, once dismissed as poetic madness, now held chilling clarity. Elias had written of the silent sentinel, the keeper of the gates, whose fury is the undoing of worlds. This was the Guardian, a cosmic defense mechanism against those who would tamper with forces beyond their comprehension. Overwhelmed by the weight of his discoveries, Alex sought out Martha once more. This time he didn't ask questions. He presented his findings, his voice laced with the urgency of revelation. Martha listened, her ancient eyes fixed on his, a lifetime of sorrow etched into her face. When he finished, a profound sigh escaped her lips. "You know then," she whispered, her voice raspy with emotion. "You know what he tried to do." She confessed, the words tumbling out like a long-held dam breaking. Martha was indeed Clara's sister, and she had been present during Elias's reckless experiments. She spoke of his brilliance, his consuming love for Clara, and his desperate, misguided belief that he could harness the gateway's power to transcend human limitations, to create a perfect reality for them both. But his ambition had been hubris. The Guardian, in its protective fury, had intervened, not to destroy, but to contain the damage. Clara's soul, caught in the chaotic maelstrom of Elias's failed attempt, had been fragmented, scattered across the nascent realities Elias had inadvertently touched. Martha, burdened by guilt and grief, had sworn to protect the floor, to be its silent guardian in the physical world, living a life of quiet penance and constant vigilance. She warned Alex, her voice thick with pain, of the catastrophic dangers of disturbing the balance, of the Guardian's ultimate unyielding power. Yet Martha's warnings, while chilling, only fueled Alex's resolve. He felt an undeniable pull, a sense of responsibility to unravel this tragedy, to understand Elias's desperate love, and perhaps to bring some measure of peace to the tormented souls caught in this cosmic aftermath. His nights became restless, filled with vivid, haunting dreams. He saw Elias younger, vibrant, then consumed by a manic intensity as he manipulated strange devices. He saw Clara, her face radiant with love, then contorted in a silent scream as she was torn apart by unseen forces. These were not mere dreams. They were echoes, glimpses into Elias's past, leading inexorably to his ultimate tragic fate. The Guardian's manifestations grew more aggressive. Objects in Elias's hidden room would suddenly fall. Unseen hands would brush against Alex's neck, and the low hum of the elevator would intensify into a guttural growl when he approached the hidden floor. It was a clear, unambiguous warning. But Alex pressed on, driven by a nascent sense of purpose that transcended his former pragmatic existence. He discovered a hidden mechanism beneath a loose floorboard in Elias's laboratory. A complex, intricate device, a console of sorts, designed not to open the gateway, but to interact with it, to manipulate its energies. It was Elias's tool, his key to the impossible, and now it was Alex's. Alex, his fingers tracing the cold metallic contours of the device, finally understood the full devastating scope of Elias's ambition and betrayal. It wasn't merely a desire to open the gateway. It was an attempt to control existence itself, to reshape reality to fit his idealized vision of love with Clara. Elias had sought not to transcend human limitations, but to rewrite them, believing that with enough intellect and power he could force the multiverse to yield to his will. His journal entries, once appearing as mad ramblings, now laid bare the chilling logic of a man convinced of his own genius, blind to the catastrophic consequences. He had tried to pull Clara's essence from across the nascent realities he had glimpsed, to consolidate her fragmented soul into a single perfect being, a being he could possess entirely. This act of profound selfishness, cloaked in the guise of love, had fractured Clara's soul not just across dimensions, but into countless shards, each echoing her pain, her confusion, her unfulfilled existence. Martha, her face etched with a lifetime of sorrow, confirmed Alex's grim realization. She spoke of the day of the incident, the raw primal scream that had ripped through the hidden floor, the blinding light, and then the suffocating silence. Clara, her beloved sister, had been irrevocably lost, scattered like stardust by Elias's reckless hand. Martha had witnessed it all, the horror of her sister's dissolution, the terrible price of Elias's misguided love. She had lived with the crushing weight of that guilt, the silent accusation of her sister's fragmented existence, guarding this impossible floor, this monument to a love that had destroyed everything it touched. For decades, she had been the silent sentinel, a living testament to the Guardian's necessary fury, her heart a constant ache for the sister she could never fully mourn. A profound empathy settled over Alex, a heavy cloak woven from Elias's desperate love and Martha's enduring suffering. He saw Elias not as a villain, but as a tragic figure, consumed by a love so fierce it warped his judgment, leading him down a path of cosmic transgression. He understood Martha's silent vigil, her decades of penance, her quiet despair. And in that understanding, the Guardian's aggression suddenly made perfect sense. It was not malevolent, but fiercely protective. A cosmic immune system reacting to a grave threat. Its manifestations were not attacks, but desperate warnings, a primal roar against the disruption of universal order. A new purpose ignited within Alex, a fire far brighter than his former pragmatic ambition. He would attempt to right Elias's catastrophic wrong. He would try to gather the scattered fragments of Clara's soul, not for Elias's selfish desire, but to bring peace to Clara, and finally, to Martha. It was a monumental, perhaps impossible task, but the weight of the past, the silent plea of a fragmented soul, compelled him forward. He approached the intricate device, his hands steady despite the tremor in his heart. Martha, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fragile hope, watched him. "Are you sure?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the low hum of the floor. Alex met her gaze, a resolute nod, his only answer. As Alex began to activate the complex mechanism, turning dials and pressing ancient-looking buttons, the hidden floor responded with terrifying intensity. The dim ethereal lights flickered wildly, casting grotesque dancing shadows across the forgotten artifacts. Objects on dusty shelves began to vibrate, then levitate, rotating slowly in the charged air before crashing back down with jarring thuds. A low guttural growl emanated from the very walls, a sound that seemed to vibrate his bones. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen energy, charged with something ancient and immensely powerful. Then, the Guardian manifested fully. It wasn't a solid form, but a terrifying swirling vortex of pure energy, an iridescent maelstrom of light and shadow that filled the center of the hidden room. It pulsed with raw, untamed power, its presence a deafening roar in Alex's mind, a primal scream of protection and warning. Tendrils of energy lashed out, scorching the air, threatening to consume him. Alex stood firm, facing the colossal, swirling entity. He felt no aggression, only a profound sense of understanding. "I don't mean to cause harm," he projected, his voice surprisingly steady amidst the chaos. Not with words, but with the sheer force of his intent. "I understand your purpose. I seek to restore balance, to mend what was broken by misguided ambition. I need your help to bring peace to a fragmented soul, to right a terrible wrong." He opened his mind, laying bare his intentions, his empathy for Clara, and his desire to alleviate Martha's decades of suffering. He pleaded not for power, but for understanding, for cooperation in a shared endeavor to heal the universe's wounds. The Guardian, a tempest of cosmic fury just moments before, wavered. Alex's pure intentions, his plea for understanding rather than dominance, resonated through the swirling vortex of energy. The tendrils of light and shadow receded slightly, the deafening roar in his mind softening to a low resonant thrum. It was not acceptance, not yet, but a momentary cessation of its protective assault, a fragile truce born of Alex's unwavering resolve and the sheer honesty of his purpose. The air, though still charged with immense power, no longer felt overtly hostile. With this fleeting concession from the Guardian, Alex seized the opportunity. Guided by Elias's meticulously detailed research, now understood through a lens of empathy rather than ambition, he began to manipulate the complex device. His fingers moved with a newfound precision, tuning the frequencies, aligning the intricate crystals, and calibrating the energy conduits. Martha, her initial fear slowly giving way to a desperate, trembling hope, moved to his side. Her knowledge, gleaned from decades of obsessive study of Elias's work and her own silent vigil, proved invaluable. She whispered adjustments, pointed to subtle fluctuations in the device's readings, her voice a steady counterpoint to the hum of power. Together they worked in a silent, synchronistic dance, two unlikely collaborators united by a common, profound goal. A shimmering tear began to form in the fabric of reality before them, a swirling kaleidoscope of colors and light, unlike anything Alex had ever witnessed. It was a temporary portal, a fragile window into the fractured multiverse where Clara's soul lay scattered. Through the shimmering veil, Alex saw fragmented visions, fleeting glimpses of Clara across countless realities. He saw her as a child, laughing in a sun-drenched meadow, as an old woman, her face wrinkled with wisdom, as a warrior fierce and unyielding, as a scholar poring over ancient texts. Each vision was a mere flicker, a ghost of what she once was, a painful reminder of her splintered existence. Each image, though brief, resonated with a deep, pervasive sorrow, a profound sense of loss that transcended the boundaries of dimension. He felt her pain, her confusion, her unfulfilled existence echoing through the portal, a symphony of suffering that threatened to overwhelm his senses. The portal, a delicate construct of raw energy and carefully calibrated frequencies, began to behave erratically. The ethereal light flickered. The edges of the tear in reality blurred, and the low hum deepened into an ominous groan. It was becoming unstable, threatening to collapse, to snap shut and trap him, or worse, to scatter Clara's remaining fragments even further into the cosmic ether. A wave of fear, cold and sharp, washed over Alex. He knew this was the critical moment, the crossroads where his resolve would be truly tested. He had gathered what he could, the largest, most cohesive fragments of Clara's soul, but the portal was closing rapidly. He faced an impossible choice: either attempt to gather the last, most elusive pieces, risking being trapped forever between realities, or secure what he had, leaving Clara forever incomplete. The Guardian's presence, though no longer openly aggressive, intensified, a silent, weighty judgment, testing the very core of his determination. Its immense energy pressed down upon him, a palpable force that sought to expose any weakness, any hesitation. But Alex, driven by a desire for redemption that now burned brighter than any fear, pushed through the pain and the terrifying uncertainty. He felt a powerful, almost visceral connection to Clara's suffering, a shared humanity that transcended the impossible circumstances. He would not leave her incomplete. With a surge of adrenaline and a silent prayer, he reached deeper, extending his consciousness into the rapidly shrinking portal, willing the last few fragments to coalesce. He felt a searing pain, as if his own soul was being stretched to its breaking point, but he held on, his focus unwavering. Finally, with a tremendous, agonizing effort, he managed to gather the last shimmering pieces of Clara's soul, drawing them back towards their reality. The portal, now a mere sliver of light, began to close with alarming speed. "Now!" Martha cried, her voice laced with urgency, her hand outstretched. Alex, exhausted but triumphant, made a desperate, agonizing leap, propelled by Martha's guiding hand, back through the rapidly vanishing tear in reality, just as the last vestiges of the portal snapped shut behind them, leaving only the faint, lingering scent of ozone in the air. Alex and Martha returned to the hidden floor, collapsing against the cold metallic wall, their breaths ragged, hearts hammering against their ribs. The air, though no longer charged with the Guardian's raw power, still hummed with the afterglow of immense energy. Exhaustion, profound and absolute, threatened to pull Alex into unconsciousness, but the sheer triumph of their mission kept him tethered to the moment. Clara's soul, now whole, manifested as a faint ethereal presence, a shimmering, translucent form that hovered gently in the center of the room. It was like seeing moonlight distilled into a human shape, delicate and luminous. Martha, tears streaming freely down her weathered cheeks, reached out a trembling hand, not quite daring to touch the spectral form of her sister. A profound, almost unbearable sorrow mingled with an overwhelming joy on her face. "Clara," she whispered, her voice thick with decades of unspoken grief and longing. The ethereal form shimmered in response, a silent acknowledgement, a reunion beyond words. It was a bittersweet moment, for Clara could not fully return to their physical world, yet her essence was restored. Her suffering ended. The Guardian's presence, which had been a palpable weight, now receded completely, leaving behind a profound sense of calm that settled over the impossible floor, a benediction. Alex, leaning against the wall, watched the reunion with a deep, quiet reverence. He understood then, more profoundly than any architectural blueprint could convey, the true impact of his actions. He hadn't merely fixed a device or closed a portal. He had mended a broken soul, healed a grieving heart, and in doing so, had redefined his own existence. The pragmatism that had once defined him now felt thin, insufficient. It was replaced by a deeper understanding of the universe's intricate, often unseen connections. In the days that followed, a new rhythm settled into their lives. Alex and Martha, bound by their shared extraordinary experience, became the floor's new guardians. They understood the delicate balance required, the immense responsibility of protecting this nexus between realities. Alex dedicated himself to studying Elias's notes, not to exploit, but to understand and safeguard. He meticulously catalogued the artifacts, creating a comprehensive database of the floor's history and its intricate workings. Martha, her spirit lighter, her sorrow eased, became his mentor, sharing the wisdom she had accumulated over a lifetime of silent vigil. She taught him the subtle nuances of the Guardian's moods, the faint whispers of other dimensions, the silent language of the floor itself. Alex's life, once a meticulously planned sequence of predictable events, was now forever changed. His former restlessness had vanished, replaced by a profound sense of purpose. The hidden floor, with its impossible holes and ethereal guardian, became his sanctuary, his university, his calling. He still went to his architectural firm, still designed buildings, but now he saw the world with new eyes. Every brick, every beam, every window held a deeper meaning, a connection to the unseen forces that shaped existence. He understood that even the most mundane structures could, in their own way, house wonders. Martha, watching Alex, found a peace she hadn't known since Clara's fragmentation. Her sister was whole, at rest, a gentle presence that would forever grace the hidden floor. The guilt that had gnawed at her for decades finally dissolved, replaced by a quiet contentment. She knew that the floor and Clara's memory were in capable, compassionate hands. The elevator's mysterious button remained, a constant, silent reminder of their shared secret, a gateway to a world beyond the ordinary. But now, it was a symbol not of fear or mystery, but of hope, of redemption, and of the extraordinary meaning found within the mundane. Alex would often ride the elevator, sometimes pressing the unmarked button, sometimes not. He would look out at his city, the sprawling metropolis, a tapestry of countless lives, each with its own hidden depths, its own silent wonders. He understood now that the world was far grander, far more mysterious than he had ever dared to imagine. And he, Alex, the former architect of the ordinary, was now a guardian of its